Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of the Weekly Shonen Jump Breakdown for the week of August 6, 2018. My name is Trey, this is the Full Spectrum, and let's get started. We start off this week with the premise Neverland 98, starting sound. I thought this was a pretty good chapter. The reveal of the dummy shelter and how it worked out, and there is a supporter helping them, and all of the stuff that revolves around Ratri and him being a giant piece of human garbage. Is really cool. I thought that was really fun. He's got his man Andrew, who was going to literally murder all of these children, and still will if he can find them. And his current goal is to find them and the supporter and kill them all. We also get the fun moment of, hey, there's 63 people living in the shelter. Things are tough, but everybody's trying to survive, and they're not just pulling together to survive. They're actually having a good time, too. They're becoming a family. And there's a really fun gag about Nigel with his hat, and a scene of him not wearing it, and Jillian being like, who are you? What's your name again? So, all told, this was a really fun chapter. I thought that it was really cool getting the reveal of, like, hey, there are supporters, basically from the get-go, and then immediately throwing shade on that with the phone not ringing, and them not being sure whether somebody was actually there or not. I thought that was really cool. And then, the reveal at the end that, yes, this is a supporter. He's using the Morse code. He's using the password. This is him. And just the chapter ending with him being like, hey, stay where you are. I'm coming for you. And then hoping they're going to be okay. I thought this was a really fun chapter. It kicks off a brand new arc for Promised Neverland. And by telling us there are 63 people, tells us that when they start dying, we'll get number updates. And I fully expect them to start dying. I expect at some point a couple of people are going to get popped off. We also got some fun moments of, like, Hugo with one of the smaller children on his back, and Adam holding up the smaller child with his arm. And there's just some really fun times of them all coming together, and it really sells the idea that they're family. So this was a really fun chapter. Excited to see more. After that, we had One Piece 913, The Crane Returns the Favor. Basil Hawkins is a straw man. He has the straw fruit. So we finally have confirmation that Hawkins has a devil fruit. And his fruit's pretty cool. He can, like, as long as he has made straw versions of his, like, men, he can use them to take a hit for him. And so he gets hit multiple times here, but because he has them, he's fine. He also has these cards, these Strawman cards, and when he plays them, something happens. So, like, at one point he plays the Hierophant reversed. I knew I was going to trip over that word. And it allows him to catch up, but then later on he plays the Hierophant straight, like, not the reversed version, and it lets them get away, basically. It gives them someone who will help them, which turns out to be the woman that Zoro saved, whose name is Osuru, and she has a tea house. We also get to see Kiku and Urashima and Beppo. Of course Beppo's here. Of course he is. Law was coming with him. Of course Beppo's here. Oh man, it's good to see Beppo again. And it means that Law's around here somewhere, which is even better. Law is a great character. Super excited to see that. This was a really fun chapter. There's a couple of big things I wanted to call out. Hawkins gives them a 19% chance of being alive by the end of the month. And Zoro really wants that sword. And just as we expected, Luffy doesn't use the sword at all. He punches while he's holding the sword. And inadvertently cuts off another sword as he does. Also, Hawkins has a straw sword. Where he can, like, put his sword forward and then it forms out of straw and attacks. And we also get to see Zoro use the 108-pound cannon here, which is really cool. Or it may not have been the 108-pound version, but it was a version. And that was really nifty. And he did it without calling it out, too, which I thought, spoke a lot for his development. That it's just a basic attack now. I'm excited to really get to see him go all out. But this was a fun chapter. I liked it a lot. I'm looking forward to more, obviously. I feel like Urashima is gonna wind up being a bad guy. But I feel like there's going to be people who are like, man, look at how he got introduced and with that big smile and with his name right there. Urashima for Straw Hat? It's like, well, no, there's probably going to be better options here. Fine. I also thought it was really funny that immediately Hawkins is like, do you know who's in charge here? And Luffy's like, it's Kaido! And Zoro's like, we're not supposed to know that. Kinemon said we're not supposed to know that. He's like, I was joking! I don't know who it is! It's like, yeah, that's very Luffy. So this was a really solid chapter. Following that, we had My Hero Academia 193, Vestiges. Okay, so I loved this chapter, by the way, because it gave us the setup for All for One, and for who he is and why he does the thing he does. And All for One is basically just Shigaraki, and it really explains why he chose Shigaraki, but he's got this childish look of the world that, like, as long as he has power, and has the powers that he has, no one can stop him and he can do whatever he wants. The world is his playground. And that fits All for One so well that I'm glad we finally got to really see that, you know? From there, getting to see the previous vestiges, the previous users of All for One, or One for All, and getting to see that two of them are shaded so we don't get to see them. One of those two shaded looks a lot like Bakugo. Like a whole lot like Bakugo. Maybe an ancestor of his or something like that. I don't know. We've seen both his parents, so it's not one of his parents, but it definitely looked like him. We also get to see that the original user, One for All, didn't have any powers. He was completely useless. But he had the toughest spirit that he kept trying to talk his brother down, even though his brother had become one of the most powerful people on the planet. And finally, All for One gives him All for One made his own worst nemesis, and he loves it. I guarantee you, he is super hyped about that at all times. That the only person who could beat him could only do so because he gave them the ability to do so. Then you get this moment at the end of the chapter where this brother, stand down, this brother gives Deku some kind of boost. Like, he reaches out and touches Deku's hand and tells him he's not alone. And, like, All Might had said that doesn't happen, that they couldn't interact in any way, but the brother did. And Deku, like, Aoyama rushes in the room and he's sparkling as usual, you know, he's Aoyama. And Deku is, like, on the bed and he's looking at his hand, which is full cowled, and the room is just destroyed. So, like, Deku just got a boost, right? I'm very excited to see what comes from this, but All for One and his backstory and everything in there is really good. Also, All for One's bodyguard reminds me of Stain mixed with Shigaraki's teleporter. Like, the two of them mixed makes his bodyguard, and I thought that was really weird. This was a great chapter. Following that, we had Food Wars 274, Teacher versus First Seat. The stakes are laid. Suzuki's secret as to why he's here and who he is, versus Soma's chef's knife. And it seems a little weird that, you know, if you didn't know who Suzuki was, that he wants Soma's knife. But he wants Soma's knife to take the knife of Joichiro Saiba's son and prove that he's the better chef all around. It's obviously what he's doing. But Soma doesn't know that, so it just seems really weird. And Soma agrees to it anyway. It's like, well, there must be more people like Mimisaka. But, like, still, we could question that a little bit more, I think. I thought it was fun how Erina is still unconscious and Megumi's like, she's gonna be confused by that statement you made later, but oh well. And then Soma, like, throws himself under the bus by talking about how much better he's gotten. Like, he's gonna lose now because he said that. We also get some cool moments this chapter where it looks like Suzuki really seems to appreciate that Soma has some ability. As he's looking over his shoulder to, okay. Soma's dish making Megumi go gal for a little bit. And then Suzuki making the same dish that Soma did, but with white sauce? Like, I get it. You're trying to hammer home the idea that he's better than Soma. I get it. I understand that. I'm about ready for this arc to be over, and it just started, which is a bad sign. But, we'll see how it goes from here. After that, we had Blue Exorcist 102, SSCO5, 35. So this is a really interesting chapter. We get to finally figure out what Fellis was after with Lucifer and like the elixir and all the experimentation and everything. And we get to see that all that experimentation made Shiro like unstoppable. But none of it achieves what Mephisto was going for, really. And it only seems to keep causing problems. So I get why he's doing it, but like, it's not working, you know? There's also these really good moments in here where like Shiro turns to one of his fellow experimentation subjects and is like, hey, you made it through, you still okay? And the guy goes to talk and you just hear because he's lost his mind. And it's a really powerful moment as you see that Shiro is, struggling with that. He's torn up about it, but he has to continue. He wants to be able to do what he wants to do, which means he's got to do this. You also get to see Yuri again, which is pretty cool. But now she and Shiro are not quite seeing eye to eye as he ignores her. And then after he goes beast mode, he kills the green men who fled the fires from killing that Ent. And she demands to know why, and he tells her, Exorcist, exorcise demons. The way it is. He also looks so much like Yukio here. It's such a great reminder to the audience that, yes, Fujimoto is the one who raised them, but also at this point, right now, he is super destructive, and not just destructive of those in his way, but also of himself. He's reached that same level that Yukio had, where his desire is to get the one thing he wants, which is freedom. And he will do anything he has to get that. And I thought that was pretty cool. Even if the rest of this chapter, this whole like time travel thing is supposed to give us backdrop for like Yuri and everything that happens with her. But I find the stuff with Father Fujimoto so much more interesting that like I want to focus on that. And every time we go back to Yuri, I'm just like, man, but Shiro though. Following that, we had Dr. Stone 69, Steam Gorilla. My favorite moment of Jump this week is in this chapter. And it's the moment where they've upgraded the Steam Gorilla. They've upgraded the cart into the Steam Gorilla. And all the guys in the village are immediately just like, what is that? Because it's become a mech, sort of. And it's the closest thing they've ever seen to a mech, so they're just immediately floored. I thought the stuff with Senku and the older villagers was really good, where they were just like, hey, you can take more stuff if you don't take us. And he's like, but we're not going to leave you. What if Tsukasa attacks while we're gone? They're just like, we'll just beat them before then. And honestly, they weren't going to be any help in the fight anyway. They're absolutely right that it makes it a lot easier if they can just take the stuff instead of having to worry about them. But it also leaves them completely unprotected, and I expect Tsukasa to kidnap them at some point. Regardless, it works out well enough for Senku here, because they're able to set up shop behind this ridge and intend to turn the Steam Gorilla into a tank. I'm excited to find out how they plan to do that. I think it's going to be pretty cool. We also got to see Detective Suika again. That's always fun, getting to see her run around and do stuff. But this chapter was fine. It did some pretty good setup. It had my favorite moment in all of Jump this week. But it was nothing like super crazy. It was mainly set up for what's going to happen next week, next week, the week after, because Jump is on break next week, where I guarantee you it's going to be crazy. After that, we had the hot one shot. And I really didn't like this that much. It had its moments, but An is like born from birth to play hockey. And so the first half of the chapter is the stereotypical, hey, here's the guy who's really good at hockey, but doesn't want to play hockey. Here's the guy who wants him to play hockey and is part of a team that needs help. Now he's got to figure out a way to get him to play hockey. And then, like, that whole first part was super annoying for me, because we've all seen that plot a million times before. But in the second half, they just drop the aspect of he won't play hockey, like, altogether. And there's a moment where Takahashi needs help, and On is just like, I'm right there. Let's do it. After Ueda has had to tell him, that Takahashi's the best. And I thought that was pretty cool, because we just moved past a lot of that annoyance right then, in a really cool way. Then it got to be a whole different kind of annoyance for me, which is that, like, I get that On is supposed to be this super skilled, perfect for hockey, and it's all he's good at thing. But he's really, really good at it. To the point where immediately he starts, having never played an official game before, by the way, he starts criticizing both the goalie on his team and his team captain before declaring that this is just a warm-up. A warm-up for what, On? You didn't even want to play hockey. Like, don't have that subplot if you're just going to throw it away and act like it doesn't exist. So then you get this moment where On is refusing to skate, and they think they figured it out because he's just a newbie and he can't skate at all, right? But then On is like, well, I'm only half allowed to play. And the whole thing of, like, half allowed to play is because his grandpa had already sent a notice to the club that he was going to join. And then he had already decided that the next day he was going to quit. So that makes him only half eligible. But he had decided he was going to quit tomorrow. Tomorrow's not here yet. As of now, he's a full-fledged member of the team. His letter's been accepted, right? So that felt really weird to me, but all that comes in for a moment where the grandpa shows up and is like, hey, skate or die. And he's like, hey, can I skate? And the other captain, like the coach for the other team, is like, sure. So then he destroys them. And he sets the shot up for Takahashi to take and tells him that his whole problem is he doesn't have enough bravery, and like he's the one that's been defending this team all this time, so he just needs to man up and take the shot. And so Takahashi takes the shot, and they win, and everybody's happy, and then On tries to quit the hockey club, and Takahashi gets him an I Love Ice Hockey shirt. And what it looks like is that Takahashi's love for hockey is going to, override On's hate for hockey, and they're just going to move on. And they're going to win all the tournaments and everything. And I'm real torn because there are aspects of a really solid story here. But then it gets bogged down by, again, don't introduce the idea that he doesn't want to play hockey. And then have him, without even really knowing this person, just agree to play hockey so that you can have the first chapter. It's a one-shot. Have a couple pages dedicated, or even just a couple panels dedicated to Takahashi wearing down on and being around him more and getting along with him. And then have this moment. And then it feels like actual progression instead of just like, oh man, that guy worked really hard to get where he is. I guess I'll help him. And then immediately criticize him. So it just didn't work for me at all. I'm sorry, but I didn't like it. After that, we had Black Clover 168, a fight between those who swore loyalty to the same man. We get to see this really cool fight. I say really cool fight because it's over pretty much the first time Yami attacks. But Marks and Owen have been taken over by elves, of course, as everyone else was. Do a little time turn back here and get back to the original moment of it happening. And the idea that, of course they would, the elves start bad-mouthing Julius's corpse because Yami's protecting it. And then Yami immediately is like, hey, don't make them say things like that. And it really drives home the fact that Yami is supremely loyal and recognizes that Owen and Marks are also super loyal, and they're going to hate that their mouths were used to say that when they come to later, when Asta gets to him. And Yami takes him down in one attack. It's pretty sick. And he uses the back of his blade, the blunt, so that they won't die, I didn't know who was going to wind up being the real threat to Yami that showed up. I knew somebody was going to have to. But the fact that it's Charlotte is perfect. The whole subplot of Charlotte is kind of in love with Yami and doesn't know how to deal with it is now being spun on its head. And I'm curious because we saw Luck holding back because he cares about his friends. Will Charlotte also hold back because she loves Yami? We'll see. But this was a fun, very, very short chapter. After that, we had We Never Learned 74. Sometimes the predecessor experiences formidable exes. Oh, I almost couldn't handle it throughout this chapter. I tried so hard, but I almost couldn't handle it. Best Girl chapter. Best Girl in an Apron chapter. Best Girl with a Ponytail chapter. Best Girl Pouting chapter. What else do you need? What else do you need? Okay, to be serious for just a second, I really liked this chapter. It was a really good look into Kirisu and Yuiga's dynamic, and more I'm convinced that they work together better than all the rest of the couples, and that's not because she's best girl. They just do. The closest one, I think, would be Furuhashi. But the way that they kind of just understand each other and just move on to the next... The moment where it's really awkward because Yuiga recognizes that it's a little suggestive that, she's beating the meat together for the hamburgers and like getting all that together, and he decides to change the subject. He talks about her work. He talks about like, it must be pretty hard being a teacher, and she's like, nah, I just, I'm not going to let anybody down. I'm going to do as much research as possible, which is immediately turned on its head when he realizes she isn't using a recipe, which just shows that Kirisu may be the perfect teacher, right? But she's not a perfect human. She still makes mistakes, and makes that tie that binds them even stronger, only to lead to the single best moment in this whole chapter, which is when she pouts at the lecture Yuiga's giving her, which is something she would never do to a regular student, that proves that they have become something more. Whether romantic or not, they have become something more. They've become friends, at least. And I thought that was really cool. I really liked that. I also liked that, she had no idea what she was doing, and she feels genuinely upset when her cooking's bad. But she also gets even more upset when he's mad that she's wasting ingredients. She's like, are you angry? Like, she seems actually upset that he's angry. And he is, of course, very angry because she's wasting ingredients for no reason. This was a really fun chapter, and it all culminates in this really powerful moment at the end where she steals his lecture and uses the same lines, and Yuiga is carrying things by out in the hall and looks clearly upset about it. So that's going to come back in at some point. This was a really good chapter. And we end the week off with Seraph at the end, 70, Retainer's Cause. This is a pretty good chapter. We get to focus a little bit more on Shinoa this chapter, a little bit more on Mitsuba this chapter, spend some more time with Mika this chapter. I really liked that Yu was the one feeding him. Like, of all the humans there, of course it's going to be Yu that eats. Like, Yu just holds out his arm, and Mika feeds. And it makes perfect sense. I also liked that Yu is not afraid to call more people family. And although he just means it as in a, we're family with Mitsuba, she clearly took that a different way. So did Shinoa, and seemed a little bit upset about it. I also really liked that Yu is always Yuichiro, and he's like, yeah, I'm Yuichiro, I worked with you guys in the city guard. And they're immediately like, yeah, he's a deserter, get him. I also liked that they recognize that they've gotten stronger, where Yuichiro's like, man, these guys are moving so slow. I thought that was really cool. So, this was a really good setup chapter, but also a really good reminder of like, hey, here's where everybody stands. Yu's gotten a lot stronger. The Hiragi family still has all the remaining, like, city guard and demon army, like, in its thrall. The Hiragi family is forcing people to do what they want to do. And the leader of the Hiragi family has an angel with him. All that, though, doesn't add up to the single best moment in this chapter, which is when Gurren stands up to tell everybody why they're here and that it's okay for them to be here. And Farid Bathory comes jumping in, declaring himself a vampire and that he's going to kill everybody here. And we hard cut to them dragging Farid Bathory, who's tied up, asking and pleading for Gurren to let him go. and Gurren telling him that he's going to stay tied up for that for the rest of eternity. Obviously he won't, but that was such a good gag. I laughed really hard about that one. But this was a really fun chapter. I liked it quite a bit. With that said, though, we've reached the end of Jump for this week. There will not be Jump next week. Jump is going on break. But there will be a single issue of One Punch Man that comes out, so we'll review that instead. But in the meantime, and until next time, I have been Trey. This has been The Full Spectrum. Let me know in the comment section down below how you like this new format that we used, where instead of doing a summary, I just talk about the high points that I like from it. And until next time, remember to always enjoy the full spectrum life has to offer.